Good morning. Welcome to 3 Minute Manna. It is good to see you today. It is Jesus Tuesday. And our reading today is going to come from Luke chapter 5. In Luke chapter 5, in verses 12 through 16, the Lord heals a leper. But the Lord tells the leper, it's fairly early in the Lord's ministry, the Lord tells him to tell no one, that he was to go and show himself to the priest and make an offering for his cleansing. The man, we know from the parallel accounts, in Mark's account it says the man went out and began to proclaim it freely. He was so overjoyed at what the Lord had done that he proclaimed it freely and to spread the matter so that Jesus could no longer openly enter the city. It says in Luke's account, so he himself, at verse 16, so he himself often withdrew into the wilderness and prayed. Things were going so well, and everybody was learning about Jesus. But it was overwhelming, and it was to the point where the Lord himself often withdrew from it. He withdrew from his own success, if you will. And I wanted you to think about different reasons that sometimes when things are going well, that sometimes people still need to withdraw. One thing we see here, he withdrew into the wilderness and prayed. The Lord still made time with all of the success that he was having and all of the multitude constantly following him around. The Lord understood the importance still of going to your Father in prayer in private. Go into your room and shut the door. That was getting harder and harder to do for the Lord, but the Lord still made time for it. But the only way he could make time for it, for that private prayer, was to withdraw himself from the multitude. So that's what he did. He withdrew himself often into the wilderness and prayed. Also, I wanted you to think about in the account of the feeding of the 5,000, in Mark chapter 6 at verse 31, it says in that account, the way that whole account opens, the Lord actually withdrew the disciples. He says, come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while, for there were many coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. Sometimes we need to withdraw ourselves just so that we can physically go on, right? Sometimes you have to withdraw from success just so you can physically go on, just so you can eat a little bit and get a little bit of rest. And that was what led up to the feeding of the 5,000. Also, you might think about in Mark chapter 7 at verse 11, it talks about Corban. And we don't have time to go into all the details about Corban, but I want you to think about something. That sometimes you need to withdraw. Sometimes you need to withdraw because your family still needs you. Right? Think about that idea of Corban, and I hope you understand what it is. The Lord does not want us to give ourselves completely to the church, for example, and neglect our family at home. Right? Our family needs us. Our spouse needs us. Our children need us. One last thing I wanted to mention in Luke chapter 4 at verse 43, as the Lord was having so much success in his ministry, at one point a certain city, a certain crowd sought to keep him, and Jesus says, I must preach the kingdom of God to other cities also. Sometimes you have to withdraw yourself because there is work to do elsewhere. Hope you enjoyed this study today. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow morning.